Now, here is the question, and this is the question that a lot of people are asking, all right? And I think perhaps I have found the answer. Again, I could be wrong, but hear me out. The question is, why did Russia basically turn its back on Syria? Russia could have easily bombed the shit out of those HTS guys. Why did Russia turn its back on Syria? Now you could say, well, it's because Russia is bogged down in Ukraine and it can't spread itself too thin. Russia was helping Syria in 2022 when it invaded Ukraine and when it was at war. Russia was helping Syria in 2023. So perhaps that's not really the case. Perhaps it's partially the case. You see, back in World War I, or before World War I, back in the day before the outbreak of World War I, the Austro-Hungarian Empire annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Russians didn't want this. The Russians did not want for Bosnia to be annexed by the Habsburgs. But it happened. And why did Russia allow that to happen? Well, the Ottoman Empire was an ally of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the Ottoman Empire told the Russians, if you allow the Austro-Hungarians to annex Bosnia, in exchange, we will give you access into the Mediterranean. Because if you look at a map, you got Ukraine here, you got Russia over here. Let's say you got Ukraine here, Russia over here. Okay, the camera is mirrored, so it does the reverse. If I go right, it looks like I'm using my left. Well, actually, no, it's my right hand. Anyway, let's say you got Russia over here, or so you got Ukraine over here, and you got Russia over here. You got the Black Sea. This is all the Black Sea. Then you got Turkey over here in the bottom. You got the Bosphorus, and the Bosphorus is an access way from the Black Sea, and it eventually leads into... Now, let me just make sure if I'm correct. I don't want to get my geography wrong. Black Sea, map, Turkey. Yep, I was correct. So, you got... Man, Google Images. Give me a break. So, yeah, you have the Black Sea. You got Russia over here, you got Ukraine over here, you got Turkey down here. You got the Bosphorus, and the Bosphorus leads into a body of water known as the Sea of Marmara. From the Sea of Marmara, you enter the Dardanelles. From the Dardanelles, you enter into the Aegean. From the Aegean, you enter into the Mediterranean. So Russia is Russia is kind of trapped in a way in the Black Sea, and it wants to have that freedom to go from the Black Sea through the Bosphorus, into the Sea of Marmara, into the Aegean Sea, from there into the Mediterranean Sea. The problem is that Russia has to get the permission of Turkey to use the Bosphorus to enter the Sea of Marmara, and the Sea of Marmara is still within Turkey's territory, so it still needs that permission to go through the Dardanelles to enter the Aegean Sea. So the Ottoman Empire told the Russians, this is before the outbreak of World War I, the Ottoman Empire told the Russians, if you allow the Austro-Hungarian Empire to annex Bosnia and Herzegovina, we will allow you access through the Dardanelles into the Mediterranean Sea. We're not going to restrict your access through the Dardanelles. The Russians said, great. So the Russians turned their backs on their Serbian ally because the Serbians were living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so the Turks and the Russians made a deal. Now that's fast forward to our own time. Okay. Well, actually, no, let's talk a little bit more about World War I because it is fascinating. So the Russians said, okay, Habsburgs, you can take Bosnia. We made a deal with the Turks that they're going to give us unlimited access into the Mediterranean. The Habsburgs take Bosnia and Herzegovina, they annex it, and now they're controlling a territory with a bunch of Serbs living in there. And then you had some Serbian nationalist, and he killed the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife. And that sparked World War I. So let's fast forward to our own time. You have Syria. Russia has a naval base in the Tartus area of Syria, which means Russia has direct access into the Mediterranean from Syria. And with that naval base in the Tartus, Russia doesn't have to worry about getting permission from the Turks to go through the Bosphorus into the Sea of Marmara, from the Sea of Marmara into the Dardanelles, from the Dardanelles into the Aegean, from the Aegean into the Mediterranean. It doesn't have to go through all that Turkish bureaucracy. It can just go from Syria to the Mediterranean. So perhaps there was a deal, kind of like the one that was between the Ottomans and the Russians and the Habsburgs before World War I, in which the Turks told the Russians, listen, you allow us to take Syria, we're not going to stop you getting that access into the Mediterranean. And the Russians said, okay. And the Russians turned their backs on Syria, just like they turned their backs on the Serbs of Bosnia. Just a thought, just an observation, not saying it's 100%. Like I always say, I don't have the paper that says, oh, I got, it says this, and I got the leaked documents, and it says there was a deal. No, I'm just saying that could be it, that could actually be what happened. Because there was a deal before World War I in which the Turks told the Russians, if you let the Habsburgs take Bosnia, we'll give you access into the Mediterranean. And the Russians took that deal. And perhaps the Turks did a similar deal. Perhaps the Turks said, okay, you allow us to overthrow Assad, and, we're not going to kill Assad. You can take him back to Russia. He's your friend. And we're not going to touch Tartus. We're not going to touch Tartus. In fact, we won't hinder you from going through the Dardanelles. And it's possible that that's what happened, that there was a deal, because Turkey really wants that access into the Mediterranean. It's a major maritime territory, very important geostrategically. There's a lot of natural resources in the Mediterranean. So there's natural gas in the Mediterranean. So Russia doesn't want to let that go. So Russia said, okay, well, you want to overthrow Assad, you want to take over Syria, but what about my Tartus? What about my Tartus naval base? Well, and Turkey said, well, you can have that. We won't touch it. And in fact, when Israel started expanding into Syria, Israel made an agreement with the Russians that they wouldn't touch any Russian soldiers, that they would make sure not to touch any Russian military installations, that they wouldn't attack any Russian soldiers. So I think Russia really wants to maintain that access into the Mediterranean. And I think that was a part of the deal. And if that is the case, and I think it is, because it's obvious they want that access into the Mediterranean, and it's obvious that if Turkey and Russia and America made a deal about this, that the Tartus was part of the deal. And if that is the case, like I said, which I think it is, then it's quite parallel to what happened before World War I. The Turks told the Russians, you can have access through the Dardanelles into the Mediterranean. And Russia turned its back on the Serbs. And because the Austrians annexed Bosnia, you had a Serbian nationalist who got pissed off about it, who shot the Archduke, and the Germans used that to justify invading the rest of Europe. So there's like I said, our time, what we're living in right now, not too different from what happened before World War I and what happened before World War II.